So row mobility is an entry-level stretch program, or mobility and activation program. So we're just using general stretching guidelines. We're not doing anything advanced. We want to make it as simple and basic as possible. We're to remove all barriers of equipment. So we're just using body weight and predominantly static stretches. Now, we also have dynamic stretches to provide a warm-up. Now, a dynamic stretch is movement or fluid continuous movement which brings blood to the muscles, which brings heat to the muscles, which warms up the muscles. It also lubricates the articular surfaces of the cartilages of a joint, and also it starts to turn the brain on to what it's about to do. So a warm-up, a dynamic warm-up, should be a rehearsal of what you're about to do. So therefore it makes sense if we're going to do a squat day, we have squat type movements in our squat series, or squat series warm-up. Same with the bend, we have bends in our warm-up, and etc., etc. If you're playing soccer, you should have movements that rehearse soccer at about 60% or so intensity. So that's a sort of a general dynamic warm-up guideline. General guidelines for stretching, if we have a scale from 0 to 10, and where 10 is you're in hospital because you've snapped a muscle, and 0 is you're asleep, we use this scale to communicate with the client or communicate with yourself on how intense the stretch is. So we're talking about a dynamic, fluid and continuous warm-up. We want to have about a 4, 5, 6 stretch sensation. Now for a static stretch, we want to have 6, 7, 5, 6, 7. 7 is at about the point that your body senses, whoa, pain. And that's called a stretch reflex. Now, so what a stretch reflex is you have organs in your body, stretch organs in your body, and nerves in the body, as in the muscle spindles, without getting too much detail, and they detect a stretch. And they'll go, yeah, okay, well that's all right, 4, 5, 6, that's fine. 7, more. This feels like danger, alarm, 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 and it stops you moving. Now, until you can prove to the brain and also the muscle that, you know what, this is safe. There's no real sense of alarm. The alarm is going to be released. I will now allow a little bit more range of motion. Now, it takes about 6 to 10 seconds for the Golgi tendon organs to override that stretch reflex and allow that extra range of motion to go. Now, so the way I express that and the way we want to do all the stretches is to gradually build up the range of motion until you get a 6 or a 7. If you're new to stretching, 5, 6 is okay, but we're aiming to get a 7 out of 10. So you gradually move into that stretch. So gradual is gentle, be kind to yourself. And then you're going to hold that stretch position for 6 to 10 seconds. So if we say be conservative, hold for 10 seconds, that 7 out of 10 over those 10 seconds will then turn into a 6. And sometimes you don't realise it, sometimes maybe 20 seconds has gone by. At that point, you move further into the stretch to up to a 7 again. And then that's like a piggyback motion until it just becomes to a barrier that just will not move. Now, what to enable you to do that a little bit more effectively is you need to be relaxed, you need to be calm. Now, the way to do that is you move gently. You can, every time you go from 6 back to 7 is exhale. So as you exhale, gently move further into that barrier, and you'll feel the barrier. It will take over time to educate yourself to what it means by the barrier, but the barrier means 7 out of 10. The stretch reflexes become alarmed. and you'll feel that sort of pain. Now, the more you can use your breath, especially the exhale, not only physiologically as you breathe out, all the oxygen has gone out of your body, so it's created more space, but the exhale makes you calmer. And if your brain is calmer, it says no alarm, it'll enable you to stretch further. Now, why do we want to stretch further? Is because we want to be able to function better in life doing our squat, our bend, our push, our pull, and our twist. If you have poor posture from texting or overuse of a particular sporting pattern, you may initially be more effective at it, but over time it's going to go law of diminishing returns, and it'll create imbalances, which will create movement dysfunction, which will create pain. So we want to restore alignment through static stretching. Now, at this point, there are other methods of mobility, and there's tons and tons. And you can go and explore them at your leisure. But this, once again, is a basic level introduction to stretching, which is going to serve you well. Sometimes when you stretch, the muscles will feel like elastic, right? And that's healthy tissue, that's good to go. Sometimes it might feel like leather, and leather's not moving anywhere. And you've got to think, well, why? Okay, we have a little bit of a gain, and we can use other intervention methods, but we're doing static stretching. You have a little bit of a gain, but sometimes stretching is not the way to go. We want to do the opposite, and we want to activate something. So all these Rome series start with static stretching, and then there's activation exercises. Now, activation exercises may give up more range of motion than static stretching, because the activation makes the brain and the body feel secure. If the body and the brain feel secure, then it gives up range of motion. So in this Rome mobility series, we have stretching, static stretching to start with, because that's probably the best place to start with, and then activation, and then they work together, kind of like a yin-yang relationship. If you feel like leather, sometimes it's just not worth, you know what, I've done this for 2 minutes and I've hardly made any progress. What I'll do is I'll do an activation exercise, and then see, using my 5-animal assessment, or the particular animal assessment that we use for each animal, to reassess, to see which is better. So what we're looking for is the one best stretch and the one best activator after this whole series. The different animals have a different amount of stretches. Like the bear is the shortest one, and the least complicated one, and the dragon is the more stretches and way more complicated because we're using the spine. Okay, so that's our general stretching guidelines.